All right, Zambia's Premier Analysis Show is the drill. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. It's at Emmanuel Zite. That's at Emmanuel Zite. So, the Football Association of Zambia was having its annual general meeting this past weekend, and they always discuss money matters on Zambia's Premier Analysis Show, where I have the singular pleasure of hosting. He's a soccer fan, but he's here as a chartered accountant. Mumbo Lombe, thank you for coming through. First off, the annual general meeting came and went, and of course, let's discuss the numbers. What do they mean? Essentially, what is the position from an independent vantage point? What do you see in the numbers at Football House?
Well, to start with, like you've correctly put it, finances is always an interesting thing to look at, and as usual, like in our football family, when there is an AGM, there's always a position where the treasurer has to report to the councillors how the year went financially, and he did just that. So we are looking at how 2017 was for FAZ in terms of finances.
Okay, let's talk about the good stuff. I hear financial statements always have the good stuff, the not so good stuff, and where we probably need to improve. Let's start with the good stuff. What was the good thing or things that you saw in the financials for the year ended 31st December 2017 for FAZ?
Well, I'll start with the comprehensive statement of comprehensive income, and of course, maybe I'll start with the operating income. In terms of operating income, income shot up by 18 million from 27 million to 44.6 million. Came the expenditure shot up from 32 million to 54 million. And of course, when it came to other income, which is things like grants from Football Association of Zambia, a little bit, some money from CAF, and these little monies like Zite's team, your player punches a referee, maybe in such cases there always be those fines and the like. Other income dropped from 6 million to only 18,000. Then, in terms of costs, the cost, when we were looking at the cost shot up, and the end position was that we recorded a deficit of 6.6 million.
What does that mean? Because you're telling me that there was money coming in, and all of a sudden there's
in layman's language,
a deficit.
In layman's language, we can simply say we recorded a loss of 6.6 million, meaning that we spent more compared to what was coming in. Now you might ask to say, how can you spend more when what came in wasn't so much? It's a question of, for instance, you and me are living in a home. We contract someone to come and say, come and do maybe clearance outside the house, and we haven't paid you, meaning that the cash outflow hasn't happened on that particular day or in that particular period, but you've incurred the cost. So we incurred more costs than the income during the year. So we ended up with a deficit of 6.6 million.
Wow. So when you further analyze the costs and the numbers generally, why are we spending more than this? How did we get to this position? Is it a scary decision? Because if you tell me that there's a deficit of over 6 million kwacha, that sounds scary as from a layman's vantage point.
Well, Zite, maybe even when we talk about 6.6 million, the truth of the matter is that when you're owing someone, you have to tell that person, in this case, the suppliers stroke individuals who could have done some services to FAZ, who could have provided some services or goods to FAZ. At some point in time, they will come and say, Bwana, we want our money. And it's unfortunate, I think a month ago, or is it 3 weeks ago, we had some bailiffs visiting FAZ. FAZ was owing this supplier or someone who provided transport during the AFCON under 2017 that we hosted. We found ourselves in a situation whereby the bailiffs pounced on the property at Football House. So those are some of the risks that those are some of the things that you start encountering when you're not paying suppliers on time or providers of services. That was just over 325,000 kwacha. Now, in the last, allow me to strain what has happened in the last 4 or 5 weeks. we've had 3 default judgments. And those 3 default judgments, they were against FAZ, unfortunately. And we're talking about 5 million that the courts decided to say FAZ has to pay person A, B, and C another 5 million. So this 6.6 million that we are looking at, it's even an understatement. Because in the world of accounting, there's what we call post-balance sheet events. And it's, like for instance, these financial statements, this is a financial report as at 31st December. But you cannot prepare overnight the accounts. It post-December, you're preparing accounts, you're punching in numbers, all the summation of this, and then this report was supposed to be presented to the AGM, which was on 31st March. Now, we are now saying, as at 31st March, we incurred so much, you get it. But that standard, IAS 10, International Accounting Standard 10, requires that we have to incorporate things that could have happened between the year end date, the period end date, which is 31st December, and the date at which you are reporting the financials to your, maybe the stakeholders, like for instance, the councillors at the AGM. Now, you've got two types, or rather, you can either make a distinction between non-adjusting events and adjusting events. Now, ideally, you're talking about, like for instance, these court cases, they happened before 2017, or court cases were taking place before 31st December 2017, so they relate to the period 2017. So all things being equal, you should report them in the 2017. Are they material or not? They are definitely material. 5.5, you need to be a it has to be a very big balance sheet for you to consider it as not being material, and you consider it as a non-adjusting. In my opinion, which could be wrong, you are free to answer out. In my opinion, those amounts should have also been included here, such that the deficit was going to touch almost 11, almost 12.
Wow. So, with that said, what could be the silver lining here?
Well, Zita, the truth of the matter is that when you, for instance, you record like this loss, there will be a supplier who has not been paid. There will be a consultant perhaps who has not been paid. So all that you need to do, maybe you have to come up with a payment plan to say, Zita, you provided some consultant services. We cannot pay you now. Maybe allow us to liquidate your debt in the next 3 months or 6 months, depending on how the focus that you're making. Okay,
now generally, and social media was basically a hive of activities regards the issue of the expenses. You said they actually increased exponentially. Just explain the numbers again, because there were people who I've seen social media as a hive. There are concerns about the amounts of money FAZ is spending on things like allowances and things like that.
Well, Zita, maybe we can discuss the issue of allowances slightly later. But for now, if we should just go by what is in the financial statements. Of course, shortly we can talk about what is in the social media. To start with, Zita, there's nothing wrong, really, with spending more than what you spent in the previous period. But what is important is, are you able to justify? It's just like at home. If my monthly expenditure is 1,000 to cater for the family, maybe in that month you find that maybe a window is broken, then I'll spend more than what I spend on a monthly basis. And of course, like when it comes to expenses, last year we hosted COSAFA, we hosted AFCON 2017. So naturally you'd expect that expenditure will go up. Like I think those two events, you naturally would expect that the expenditure would go up. But equally, when it comes to income like AFCON 2017, it was well sorted out. So it was the higher expenditure ideally was supposed to be compensated or to be footed by the higher income that you recorded, that we recorded. But of course, some of the things that you can question, like when you look at the detailed income statement, I spent some good few minutes, if not hours, looking at the detailed financial statements. Like, one of the expenses that I questioned was, in the financial statement, it was reported that we made a donation. FAZ made a donation. Now, when you look at the amount there, you start wondering to say, there's a donation of 1.7 million there. Zita, you can see it. Now, 1.7 million, you ask yourself, what were we donating or whom were you donating to? Then how does the figure compare to the previous period? In the year 2016, that line, it was 89,500. Came last year, it was 1,766,000. I think if you do your maths there, it increased by more than.
But why are you questioning it from an accountant's vantage point?
There is nothing wrong with questioning a figure. When you're looking at the figures, you shouldn't just look at the figures being reported. You should even ask yourself to say, okay, salaries the salaries have gone up by, they've doubled. Why have they doubled? Is it because you increase the salaries, or it's because maybe the head count increased? You have to question the numbers, and all those figures are supposed to make sense. I'll give you another example that I had a lot of questions around this. 1 million exchange loss was reported.
What does that mean?
Is it in simple terms? Today you've got $100. The rate is 9.5. So it's equivalent to 950,000. You keep your $100 in your piggy bank. Then what happens? After 3 months, you'd find that maybe the rate is 9 kwacha flat. It means when you go and change that money, instead of getting a 950,000, you only get, instead of getting a 950 kwacha, you only get a 900 kwacha, meaning that you've made a loss of 50 kwacha. That would be an exchange loss. If it's in the opposite direction, we'll call it an exchange gain. Now, when you look at FAZ, you cannot look at the exchange loss in isolation without looking at the balance sheet. The dollar, when you look at the rate January 2017, the rate was fairly stable. It was 9.9, it gets down 9.6, 9.4, that kind of a thing. You get it. Now, when you look at the balance, the opening balance for the dollar account or dollar accounts that FAZ has, the summation was 239 kwacha. Then at year end, it was the summation of the dollar accounts in kwacha terms stood at 460 kwacha. So if when you just look at the balance sheet movement, that's an increment of less than 239 to 400, about 160,000. You get it. But if you now question yourself, meaning that, for instance, the money that we received from CAF, if the money came from CAF in dollars, it means the money came, we spent. Now, when the money, for instance, the day the money arrives, the rate is at 9.8. The time you're spending it, maybe it's at 9.7, or it has gone to 9.9. The movement is very minimal. You get it. Now, to put this figure into context, if you've got in terms of in terms of the dollar account, we closed with something like $46,000. $46,000. That's what was the closing balance as at the end. Now, if we had to put it in context for you to record such a loss, Zita, if you've got $1 million, the rate is 10 kwacha. You keep it for a year, and at the end of the year, the rate has moved favorably in kwacha terms, and it now becomes it's at the rate of 9 kwacha. That's when you can record a 1 million exchange loss. So now you ask yourself, how did we arrive at this exchange loss? I'm not saying this figure is wrong, but I'm saying we should question it, and people should provide answers to say, how did we record an exchange loss when the movement, balance sheet movement, is neither here nor there.
So what were the other highlights?
The other highlights, of course, the other highlights, of course, maybe we can talk, let's start with the income side. In terms of advertising and TV rights, which is understandable, we hosted AFCON, and I think we had the World Cup qualifiers, never mind the result that we recorded. That line doubled from 10.8 million to 20.9 million. Then in terms of revenue, from the games get takings, the get takings shot up from 4 million in 2016 to 13 million in 2017. Then in terms of grants, there was a drop from 11.5 to 8 million. And then one interesting figure that I found, it's regulatory, what's this? No. Sponsorships also went down from 11.1 to 9.2. But of course, there's one figure that really interested me. It's fines and appeals. It shot up from about 200 to about 700,000 kwacha. What does that mean? We had a lot of appeal cases during the year. That's what it means.
So people, yellow cards, a lot of indiscipline, coaches perhaps, punching referees.
Yes, unleashing and unpalatable words. That, I think that's what resulted in that. In terms of expenditure, the other line that caught my eye, salaries and wages, we moved from 3.7 million to 5.6 million. Not sure if it was the head count, because that's an increase of about 2 million. Not sure whether it's a head count that went up, or maybe we hired very expensive staff. I'm not sure. Of course, the accountants there and the FAZ SG would explain more. The other figure that caught my attention is the issue of office repairs. Office repairs, office expenses, that moved from 834 to 2.8 million, and I was wondering what could be in that figure. Now, all this that happened on the income statement will take us to where we'll close at as at year end, and I would like us to just have a very quick look at the balance sheet where we are. In terms of balance sheet size, it's 34.3 million. Out of 34 million on the asset side, more than 50% is in property, plant and equipment. There's football house, there's some asset in Wansha, which is more like under construction. There's another site, which is somewhere in Ibex. I think those are some of the properties that I can remember that belong to FAZ. In terms of current assets, it's assets, all things being equal, that it's cash stroke near cash. So maybe if FAZ sold some TV rights to person A, that person is yet to pay us, it will fall under receivables. And then, of course, the other line there is cash and bank. The current assets closed at 16.3, the comparative figure being 12.7 in the year 2016, meaning that there were more people owing FAZ than last year. When we look at the liability side of the balance sheet, remember we had a deficit. When we're talking about the incomes, on the income side, we said we recorded a deficit. We spent more than we had earned. So that contributed to a figure in the balance sheet which we call payables stroke accruals. When you look at payables, it's just how much are you owing people? You, if I ask you to say, how much are you owing me? That's what we are calling liabilities. So when you look at liabilities, in the year 2016, the liabilities stood at 7.7 million. In the year 2017, we closed at 20.7 million, meaning that the liabilities increased by like twice more, from 7.7 million liabilities to 20.7. Remember, we were discussing about those possible default judgments. If there is no fight put up against those successively, they also come and land here, meaning that this liabilities line can even shoot up to 25 million.
Okay, now before we actually put closure to this one and probably entertain the callers to come through, what does this mean? Essentially,
in my very honest opinion, we do not, financially, as at 31st December, our financial statements as a football family, they are very unhealthy. Why do I say so? We are talking, for instance, we are talking about...
How long can we survive?
Well, it depends on maybe if we are good at negotiating. If we can maybe say, the people that we are owing, we can say, guys, forgive us, we'll pay you starting next year. But when you look at the current situation, we are owing 20.7 with the possibility of increasing to 20 to about 26 looking at the default judgments that were made against us. I'm aware that there are some other 2-3 cases where FAZ has been taken to court as at now. And I'm aware of people who are being owed money by FAZ. Now, what is the risk there? The risk is that those people, if they are good people like me, they would say, FAZ, maybe don't give us. Or they may say, give us next year. But if they are going to say, Bwana FAZ, you owe us money, please pay us. These things will make us, one, there's an issue of reputation. You don't want to run an institution which is failing to pay debt. Second, there's an issue of like the court actions, like we witnessed. Someone will go again to court, bailiffs will pounce on us. One day they will get even the computer that we use for the fixtures and communication to CAF. Those are the risks that we are facing. So with this state, it will not be news to hear that the workers at FAZ have not been paid. What happens now when you've got a very demotivated staff? Is that health for an institution? So those are things that will make us find ourselves in very big trouble if this is not addressed. Now,
are the assets of the football associations of Zambia safe in view of this figure that you are telling us, 20.7?
Zita, the total assets for football association of Zambia are standing at 34 million. Now, out of 34 million, 18 million is in fixed assets. Remember the trouble with fixed assets. You may not be able to realize cash as you may want. The trouble with what do you call it, fixed assets. You may find that when you are in a stress situation, you may end up maybe selling that asset at a very low price, so that as to meet the obligations that are coming, that are falling due. Or in some cases, the bailiffs will just pounce on these, and you have trouble getting back your assets. You get it. Now, the last thing that the last thought that I have is, when you are in a deficit position, what do you look at? Even at individual level, Zita, you say the month has ended. I'm owing the people. I'm owing 3 people 3,000 kwacha. What is your focus? What do we look at? Naturally, we'll look at it. How much income will I earn in the next period, so that I can be able to pay Mr. Banda, Mr. Mlenga that I'm owing. You get it? That's what we do, even at individual level. The same principle applies even at company level. Yes, the year has ended, 2017. Financially, it wasn't a good year for FAZ. Now, looking forward, what should give us hope? It is the budget. And now in the budget, you should be saying, okay, if I'm to explain it at an individual level, my monthly expenditure is 1,000 kwacha. I already owe someone 1,000 kwacha. What do? You have to plan for income which will be enough to cover up the costs. You get it? Now, when you look at the current budget, it takes away hope, actually. Instead of giving you hope, it takes away hope. The budget that we're having in 2018 is as follows. We are projecting to earn 67.9 million, and we are projecting to spend 67.8. I hope we are paying attention to those figures. Projected income, 67.9. Projected expenditure, 67.8. Leaving a surplus of how much? 100,000. Now, where does that leave us financially? Because already the liabilities are standing at 20.7. The most recent deficit is standing at where? At what do you call it? At 6.6. So the liabilities which we are talking about, closing position was 20.7, plus those, if we are to add that 5 million deficit, we'll be at 26. Where are we going to get the money to fund the 20 million in liabilities?
All right, multi-million-dollar questions. Well, it was an Easter weekend which has got a lot of questions. After the break, we entertain your calls. Of course, Nkana lost. We'll also need to look at that one. We'll also need to look at the matters arising. If you've got any questions regards the financial statements that were put up by the Football Association of Zambia on Saturday, you'll be free to call us after the break on 25 669. That's 25 669.